It was supposed to be a quiet, perfect evening, the kind of night that might finally change everything. I had spent the whole afternoon in our small Portland kitchen, carefully preparing Dylan's favorite dinner, creamy truffle mushroom risotto, garlic roasted asparagus, and a freshly baked sourdough loaf I'd made from scratch the night before. I even lit candles and set the table with the good plates. Everything was intentional, precise, because tonight I was going to tell him I was pregnant, 6 weeks along, our baby growing quietly inside me. He didn't know yet. No one did. Well, except for the woman who ruined it all. Joanne, Dylan's mother, had moved in with us 9 months ago after her divorce. She said it was temporary, that she just needed a place to get back on her feet. But instead of healing, she had slowly poisoned the air inside our home. And tonight, she was the only variable I hadn't been able to control. She invited herself to dinner, brushing past my protest with a cool, "Family dinners are important, dear, especially when you've got secrets you think you're hiding so well." That should have been my first warning. I was already nauseous from the pregnancy, the kind of unrelenting sickness that doesn't wait until morning, but I pushed through, hoping tonight would be different, hoping this meal, this night, this announcement might finally soften her, might make her see me. Instead, it broke me. I still remember the sound of her heels clicking against the hardwood as she walked toward Dylan just as I brought out the risotto. She placed a manicured hand on his shoulder and leaned in, whispering something too soft for me to hear. But I didn't need to hear it, because I saw his face. It changed in real time, from calm to furious, as if someone had flipped a switch inside him. His warm brown eyes went cold. His jaw clenched. He stood so abruptly his chair screeched across the floor. "Is this true?" he demanded, staring straight at me. "You've been lying to me." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play, Maya. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Before I could even process the words, his hand shot out. The slap came fast and sharp. I barely registered the sting before I was stumbling backward, hitting the wall behind me. My vision blurred. My cheek burned. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then came the nausea, violent, involuntary. My stomach clenched, and in front of both of them, I threw up. Dylan recoiled, disgust etched across his face. "Maya, what the hell?" His words cut off when he saw something fall from my purse, which had tipped over in the chaos, a small pink stick. He reached down, picked it up, and looked at the tiny window. 2 lines. "Is this—" I was still on the floor, clutching my stomach with one hand, the other covering my burning cheek. "Yes," I whispered, "I'm pregnant." Silence. For one long, suffocating moment, the only sound in the room was the sizzle of asparagus still crisping in the oven. Joanne said nothing. Her lips were pursed into a thin, satisfied line, but even she hadn't expected this. Dylan looked at the pregnancy test, then at me, then at his hand. "Oh my God," he murmured. "Maya, He stepped forward. I flinched. He stopped. The man who had once held my hair when I had food poisoning, who used to leave me notes in my lunchbox, who promised to love and protect me in front of our families, had just struck me while I was carrying his child. Everything I thought I knew about him shattered in that instant. Then came the sound that would change everything. The front door creaked open. Tessa, our neighbor, stood in the doorway, her eyes wide, breath catching when she saw my red cheek and the wreckage around us. "I heard shouting," she said slowly, scanning Dylan, then Joanne. "Is everything okay in here?" I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say the word yet. Number nothing was okay, and I didn't know if it ever would be again. I met Dylan on a rainy Friday afternoon at Juniper and Brew, the cozy little cafe tucked between Powell's bookstore and the old movie theater on 11th. I was sitting near the window, grading a stack of children's books for the library's reading program, when a man juggling 2 iced coffees and a phone in his mouth stumbled past my table and knocked over my entire pile of paperwork. "Oh God, no, I'm so sorry," he said, voice muffled by the phone he tossed aside to grab napkins. "Please don't hate me. I swear I'm not usually this clumsy." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because he looked so genuinely horrified. His efforts to blot the papers were hopeless but endearing. A complete stranger apologizing over and over, red in the face, trying to save a worksheet about dinosaurs. "Let me make it up to you," he pleaded. "Coffee, dinner, a new stack of children's books." I remember looking at him, tall, messy hair, kind eyes, and saying, "Start with dinner." That was the beginning. Dylan was golden, kind, attentive, funny in a way that didn't need to be loud. He was an architect with a deep love for old houses and a habit of sketching people when he thought they weren't looking. He called me fascinating, treated my job at the public library like it was the most noble profession in the world. We got married a year later in the fall, beneath a canopy of turning leaves. Our vows were quiet, honest, and filled with laughter. We bought a small house on the east side, old but full of charm, and talked about having children someday. On weekends, we wandered farmers' markets, planned trips we couldn't afford, made slow breakfasts in our pajamas. It was simple. It was good. It was real. Until she moved in. "It's just temporary," Dylan said when Joanne called crying, 2 suitcases packed and nowhere to go after her second divorce. "She's heartbroken, Maya. She just needs a little time." I wanted to be understanding. I really did. But even from the beginning, Joanne made it clear I was not what she had imagined for her son. She never said it directly. That wasn't her style. Instead, it was small things. "Are you sure that's what you're wearing, dear?" Or, "This risotto's a bit under-seasoned, don't you think?" Or, "Dylan works so hard, you should really give him more protein." She rearranged my spice rack while I was at work, told me which laundry detergent Dylan used to prefer, left passive-aggressive sticky notes about how to fold his t-shirts. At first, Dylan brushed it off. "That's just Mom," he said. "She doesn't mean anything by it." But slowly, her influence crept deeper. He started noticing things he'd never commented on before. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the time I spent on calls with my sister, my grocery choices. And those little criticisms, they always followed long whispered conversations between him and Joanne behind closed doors over cups of tea late at night. Once, I overheard her on the phone. "She hides things, Dylan. I've seen her sneaking off to the bathroom, probably stress or something else. Are you sure she's not keeping secrets?" My blood went cold. At the time, I brushed it off. I wanted to believe Dylan knew better, that he loved me enough to see through her need for control. But with every passing month, it got harder to tell where her voice ended and his began. 3 weeks ago, I found out I was pregnant. For a moment, everything else faded. I wanted to believe it would change things, that maybe this would be the moment he'd come back to me, that the man I married still lived somewhere inside him. But Joanne was always one step ahead. Looking back now, I realize Joanne never needed proof. She only needed doubt. And once that seed was planted in Dylan's mind, she watered it every day. I started noticing how quiet Dylan became after speaking with her, how his eyes lingered a little longer when I said I was tired, how he'd glance sideways when I came back from the bathroom. The warmth in our conversations was gone, replaced by pauses, suspicion, and silence. Then came the night I caught Joanne eavesdropping. I had just returned home from work at the library, head pounding from nausea I couldn't explain away anymore. I went straight to the bathroom, as I had so many times lately, and closed the door. When I stepped out, there she was. Joanne standing by the hallway, eyes narrowed like a hawk. "You've been running to the bathroom at odd hours," she said coolly. "Anything you want to share?" I forced a smile. "Just stress." She raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I had that same stress before I found out I was pregnant with Dylan." I walked past her without replying, but her meaning was crystal clear. From that day forward, her behavior shifted into something sharper, more pointed. She began checking the trash cans, just organizing, she claimed. She hovered while I cooked, criticized how long I left food on the stove. "Smells like someone's hiding something," she'd mutter, loud enough for Dylan to hear. And he did. He'd enter the room with that same tight jaw, ask if I was feeling okay, ask again and again if I had something to say. But how could I? I wanted to tell him about the baby. I had this dream in my head. Me, him, our favorite meal, candles glowing, and a little onesie in a gift box. That's how I wanted him to find out. Just the two of us before the world, and before his mother got involved. But fear kept stopping me. Not just fear of his reaction, but fear that he wasn't really him anymore, that he had become her. That maybe if she told him the sky was green and I was lying, he'd believe it. So I waited. I kept salted crackers in my library desk drawer, claiming I was just cutting back on sweets. I blamed my exhaustion on a book drive. I told myself I just needed a few more days, a perfect moment, one quiet night where we could be alone, where maybe I'd feel safe again. That moment never came. Instead, Joanne made sure of it. It was a Wednesday. Rain clung to the windows like it always did in early spring. I was in the kitchen layering the truffle risotto, heart pounding, stomach churning, nerves tangled in 1,000 knots. The onesie, white with tiny forest animals, was hidden in a gift box by the table. I kept glancing at it, imagining Dylan's face when he opened it. But then I heard her voice. She was in the living room, on the phone. I couldn't hear everything, but the words I caught were enough. "She's hiding something, I know it. Probably having an affair. Running off every chance she gets. My son deserves better than that." My hands shook as I set the dish in the oven. An affair? Is that what she told him? Is that what she whispered in his ear? It all made sense. His growing coldness, the way he flinched when I touched him, the way his questions turned from curious to accusatory. She was poisoning him against me, not with facts, but with fear, with manipulation dressed as maternal concern. And worse, he believed her. I stared at the oven timer, watching the seconds tick down, feeling the weight of every moment I had stayed silent, every second I had tried to keep the peace, every time I swallowed my instincts and played nice. And I knew, deep down, that whatever happened at dinner that night would change everything. I just didn't realize how fast it would all fall apart. I brought the risotto to the table, forcing my smile, pretending I hadn't heard her words. The candles flickered softly, the asparagus still crisping in the oven. I placed the dish in front of Dylan, and before I could sit down, Joanne walked over to him. She put a manicured hand on his shoulder and leaned in, whispering something too quiet for me to hear. But I didn't need to hear it. I saw his face change in real time, from calm to furious, as if someone had flipped a switch inside him. His warm brown eyes went cold, his jaw clenched. He stood abruptly, his chair screeching across the floor. "Is this true?" he demanded, staring straight at me. "You've been lying to me." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Maya. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Before I could even process the words, his hand shot out. The slap came fast and sharp. I barely registered the sting before I was stumbling backward, hitting the wall behind me. My vision blurred, my cheek burned. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then came the nausea, violent, involuntary. My stomach clenched, and in front of both of them, I threw up. Dylan recoiled, disgust etched across his face. Maya, what the hell? His words cut off when something fell from my purse, which had tipped over in the chaos, a small pink stick. He reached down, picked it up, and looked at the tiny window. 2 lines, his face drained of color. Is this? I was still on the floor, clutching my stomach with one hand, the other covering my burning cheek. Yes, I whispered. I'm pregnant. Silence. For one long, suffocating moment, the only sound in the room was the sizzle of asparagus in the oven. Joanne said nothing. Her lips pursed into a thin, satisfied line, but even she hadn't expected this. Dylan looked at the pregnancy test, then at me, then at his hand. Oh my God, he murmured. Maya, He stepped forward. I flinched. He stopped. The man who had once held my hair when I was sick, who used to leave me notes in my lunchbox, who had promised to love and protect me in front of our families, had just struck me while I was carrying his child. Everything I thought I knew about him shattered in that instant. Then came the sound that would change everything. The front door creaked open. Tessa, our neighbor, stood in the doorway. Her eyes went wide, her breath catching when she saw my red cheek and the wreckage around us. I heard shouting, she said slowly, scanning Dylan, then Joanne. Is everything okay in here? I opened my mouth, but the word wouldn't come. Number nothing was okay, and I didn't know if it ever would be again. Tessa's gaze shifted to me, and something in her face hardened. She crossed the room, crouched down beside me, and said quietly, "Let's go." Dylan took a step toward us, but she straightened and held up a hand. "Don't. I'm not asking." She grabbed my coat and bag from the chair, helped me to my feet, and guided me toward the door. My legs shook under me. I couldn't look back, but I could still hear Joanne's voice behind us, sharp and dismissive. "She's overreacting, Dylan. You know how women get when they're hormonal." The door closed, cutting her off. Outside, the air was cold and wet. I inhaled, but it felt like my lungs were made of stone. My ears still rang from the slap. My body trembled from adrenaline and morning sickness. And my heart was cracking in places I didn't know existed. Tessa lived just across the street. Her guest room had once been a cheerful space for her niece, lavender sheets, string lights around the window. That night, I collapsed onto the bed and curled into myself, clutching my stomach, terrified I might have harmed the tiny life inside me. "I called your doctor," Tessa said gently. "They'll see you first thing tomorrow." I nodded, unable to speak. The next morning, she drove me. She held my hand in the waiting room, rubbed my back when I broke down trying to explain what had happened. I'll never forget the moment the ultrasound monitor lit up. A small flutter, then the sound. Strong, steady, beautiful. The heartbeat of a life not yet born but already loved. Tears slid silently down my cheeks, not from fear, not from sadness, from something deeper. That sound wrapped around my broken heart and held it together, just enough. "Do you want me to record it?" the nurse asked gently. I nodded. That night, wrapped in one of Tessa's oversized sweatshirts sitting on the edge of the guest bed, I stared at my phone for a long time. I'd promised myself I wouldn't contact him, not after what he did, not after how quickly he believed her. But the sound of that heartbeat, it wasn't mine to carry alone. I opened the audio file, pressed play once, closed my eyes, then attached it in a message. "Your child's heartbeat." That was all I wrote. No anger, no guilt, no explanations, just the truth. His reply came within minutes. "Please, can we talk? Just us? No mom? Please, Maya? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. My cheek was still tender, the bruise blooming yellow beneath the surface. But I wasn't doing this for him. I was doing it for the baby. I needed answers. I needed clarity. I needed to look into his eyes and see who was still in there, if anyone was left. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Juniper and Brew. You show up with her, I walk away forever. I won't, he replied. I swear, I'm choosing you this time. The next morning, I stood in front of the cafe where we first met, shivering, not from the cold, but from everything that still ached inside me. Tessa was parked across the street, engine running, eyes locked on me from behind the wheel. My lifeline, just in case. At 2 p.m. sharp, the cafe bell chimed. Dylan walked in alone. No coat, just a faded blue shirt and eyes sunken from sleepless nights. He paused when he saw me, like he wasn't sure I'd really come. Neither was I, but I had, for me, for the child inside me, for the version of myself that refused to be broken. "Can I sit?" he asked quietly. I nodded, even as my whole body screamed to run. He sat, but not close. He kept distance, kept his hands on the table. His voice, when he finally spoke, was hoarse. "I kicked her out last night. Joanne, she's staying at a hotel. I packed her bags myself." I said nothing. Actions were louder than words, and I needed to see more. I didn't touch my tea. It sat between us like a boundary, steam rising between two people who once shared everything and now shared nothing but silence. Dylan looked thinner, tired. The stubble on his jaw was new, his shirt wrinkled, the same one he'd worn the night it happened. His hands were clenched together on the table, knuckles white. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "For everything. For believing her. For not asking you. For what I did." I stayed quiet. "After you left," he continued, "I found her on the phone with one of her friends, laughing, saying she'd finally saved me from your lies. She said it loud enough that I knew she made it all up. She twisted everything." My fingers trembled under the table, but I forced my voice to stay steady. "And you hit me because of her." Dylan's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and there's no excuse. I believed her because somewhere deep down, I let myself. I let her control me for so long, I didn't even see it." I stared at him, the man who once made me laugh so hard I cried, who promised to protect me, who had used his hand not to hold me, but to hurt me. "You didn't just hit me," I said slowly. "You hit us." His eyes dropped to my stomach. "I know," he whispered, "and I hate myself for it." "Then prove it." He looked up, startled. "I have conditions," I said. "If you break even one, I'm done. I don't care how sorry you are. I won't raise our child in fear." He nodded once. "Okay. 1, your mother never sets foot in our house again. Not for holidays, not for visits, not at the hospital. Nothing. She gets no information about the baby, no photos, no updates. Done. 2, you go to therapy, alone every week, and we do couples counseling too. You start immediately. I already had my first session yesterday. 3, I leaned in, my voice like ice. If you ever raise a hand to me again, even once, I will press charges and file for full custody. No second chances." His shoulders dropped, shame folding his body. "I wouldn't blame you." Then he reached into his pocket and slid something across the table. A business card. Family law attorney. "I already asked her to draft custody papers," he said. "If I ever get violent again, you get full custody, no fight, no court, it's in writing." My throat closed up. He was serious. For the first time in weeks, I saw something real in his eyes, not just guilt, but the will to change. Still, I didn't relax. Words were easy. Change wasn't. "I'm not coming home," I said quietly. "Not yet." He nodded. I understand. And we don't do anything until counseling begins. Already booked, he replied, sliding another card toward me. Dr. Reena Patel, Trauma-Informed Couples Counseling. I don't want promises, Dylan, I said. I want proof. Over time. You don't get to earn me back in a day. His voice cracked. Whatever you need. I took a long, hard breath. Then here's what I need next. The next doctor's appointment. You can come. His face lit up like I'd handed him the sun. But Tessa comes too, I added. I'm not ready to be alone with you yet. Of course, he nodded quickly. Anything that makes you feel safe. For the first time since that night, I allowed myself a flicker of something fragile. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of something else. Respect, boundaries, accountability. As we stood to leave, Dylan glanced at me one last time. I should have chosen you from the beginning. No, I said softly. You should have chosen yourself and unlearned everything she ever taught you. Then I walked out first. And this time, he didn't try to follow. Dylan, your mother's outside my library. I was sitting at my desk in the youth wing, organizing new arrivals for the spring reading program, when I saw the silver Lexus SUV parked across the street, engine running, Joanne in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, unmoving, watching. My third graders were out back for an author visit, so it was just me inside. My hands trembled as I typed the message. She's been there 20 minutes, just watching the front door. His reply came fast. Don't move! I'm calling the police! 15 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. From behind the library blinds, I watched them approach her car. Joanne immediately turned on the tears, trembling hands, cracking voice, the perfect victim. I'm just worried about my son, she said loudly enough that I could hear her through the glass. His wife is unstable. She's keeping me from my grandchild. Then her tone shifted, sharp as a knife. She trapped him with that baby. She's poisoning him against me. Ashley, the library assistant, stood beside me, eyes wide. Want me to film this? She whispered. You mentioned you might need evidence for that restraining order. I nodded, my fingers gripping the windowsill. My heart wasn't pounding from fear anymore. It was from clarity. This was who he had grown up with. That night, during our couples session with Dr. Patel, I showed Dylan the footage. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the screen, hands pressed to his forehead, eyes glassy. I never saw it before, he whispered. She's exactly like she was when Dad left. She'd scream, cry, make herself the victim. And I always believed her version. Dr. Patel's voice was calm, steady. Generational patterns of emotional abuse are hard to break, Dylan, but every time you choose Maya over her manipulation, you're breaking the cycle. He turned to me. I want that cycle broken before our daughter is born. And just like that, it became real. Our daughter. The next week I had another ultrasound. Tessa drove me to the clinic, and Dylan followed behind in his own car, a precaution we'd agreed on. Boundaries still mattered. Safety still mattered. Inside, the technician smiled as she slid the gel across my stomach. Would you like to know the gender? She asked. I looked at Dylan. For the first time in months, I saw hope in his face instead of guilt. I nodded. It's a girl. My breath caught. A girl. A tiny future already growing inside me. I reached instinctively for my belly, and for the first time, Dylan reached across the space between us, and I let him. His fingers brushed mine, gentle, careful. She'll never know this kind of fear, he whispered, not while I'm breathing. As Tessa and I walked back to the car, we saw her, leaning against her SUV in the clinic parking lot, lipstick perfect, eyes cold. Joanne. Before I could react, Dylan stepped between us. He didn't hesitate. "Leave," he said, voice steady. "Now." "You have a right to know about my granddaughter," she snapped. "You can't cut me out." "You lost that right the day you made me hurt her mother." Joanne's face twisted. "She's turning you against me, just like your father. She's tearing this family apart." "Security is on their way," Tessa interrupted calmly, holding up her phone. "The clinic's already been notified." Joanne's eyes darted from me to Dylan to Tessa and back again, and then something flickered in her expression, a realization, maybe for the first time, that she had lost. She backed away slowly, heels clicking on the pavement, her voice tight with rage. This isn't over. But we knew it was, because this time, we were the ones drawing the line. That night, back in Tessa's guest room, I sat by the door. Dylan wasn't allowed to stay, not yet. We still weren't ready, but he sat outside, just on the other side of the wall. "I filed for the restraining order," he said softly through the door, "for all three of us." My hand moved to my belly. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel in weeks. Not just hope. Safety. I returned home in the 5th month of my pregnancy. Tessa helped me pack, folding my maternity clothes with quiet care, like each shirt was a choice I had made for myself. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as we zipped the last suitcase. "No," I admitted, "but I need to try. Not for him. For her." The drive back felt longer than it should have. My hands trembled slightly in my lap as we pulled up to the house, the same house where I'd been slapped, humiliated, gaslit. But when I stepped inside, everything had changed. Joanne's things were gone. No more crystal figurines glaring from the mantel. No more suffocating potpourri that made my eyes sting. No more framed photos of Dylan as a boy with handwritten notes like, "My little man, always mine." Even the walls had changed. Dylan had painted them soft yellows and greens, the same shades we'd picked for the nursery years ago, back when having children still felt like a shared dream. "I got rid of the dining room table," he said quietly, appearing in the hallway like a shadow learning how to stand in the light. "Didn't want you to have to look at it every day." In its place stood a round oak table, warm, welcoming. No head of the table, no hierarchy, no throne for his mother to hold court from. We built new routines. He texted before coming home, even from work. We cooked together, small meals, simple things. He never assumed, never acted like he was entitled to closeness. He knew now that everything was earned. Every decision about our baby was made together. No whispers, no interference. And then came the first test. At 7 months, a package arrived at my workplace, beautifully wrapped, tied with silver ribbon. Inside was an antique rattle, heavy, cold, engraved with EMW, Elena Maya Walker. Our baby's initials. No note, just a small card tucked under the tissue paper. Blood is thicker than restraining orders. I stood there in the staff room, holding that message like it was a weapon. I didn't cry. I took a photo and sent it to Dylan. 20 minutes later, he showed up at the library, rattle in hand, marching straight to our lawyer's office. "She's testing boundaries," he told the attorney. "I want that documented." That night he found me in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair we'd assembled the weekend before, my hands pressed to my belly. "I'm scared," I whispered. "What if she never stops?" "Then we never stop either," he said. "Every time she pushes, we push back, with truth, with the law, with each other. I won't let her near our daughter." We met with Dr. Patel the next morning to build a full safety plan. New passwords for daycare pickup, security cameras, informed neighbors and friends. Tessa's partner Tom, a local police officer, agreed to be our emergency contact. Every step made me breathe a little easier. Then the hospital called. Someone had been posing as my mother, asking for details about my birth plan. "Joanne," Dylan said instantly, "we'll switch hospitals. Register you under Tessa's address. No one else will know." I nodded, throat tight. Labor began at 2:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow tightening in my lower back that grew more frequent. By 4 o'clock, I woke Dylan. By 4:05, he was already in motion. He followed the plan exactly. Tessa was called. The hospital bag was in the trunk, car seat secured, front door locked, back door double-checked. We drove to the new hospital. Private maternity wing, security briefed, our OB already waiting. The delivery room was quiet, no chaos, just steady breathing. A hand holding mine. 12 hours later, our daughter arrived, Elena Maya Walker, tiny pink lungs screaming with life. Dylan sobbed openly. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She looks just like you." An hour later, a nurse walked in with a bouquet of white lilies. No sender name, just a card. "To my first granddaughter. She'll need her grandmother soon enough. Blood is forever. J." "Give this to security," I said calmly. "Flag the name. Anyone who delivers on her behalf. Document it." The nurse nodded. Dylan said nothing, just stood by the bassinet, his jaw set. 3 days later, we came home. Locks changed, security reinforced, nursery lit with soft morning sun and hand-painted woodland animals on the wall. The first nights were hard, diaper changes, late feedings, exhaustion that blurred the days. But in between, there were quiet moments of peace. One afternoon, Dylan came back from the grocery store and stood in the nursery doorway. Elena was asleep beside me. "I saw her," he said finally, "at the store." My chest tightened. What happened? "She tried to speak to me. I walked away, called the manager, followed the plan." I exhaled. "And how did you feel?" "Sad," he admitted, "but steady. I didn't hesitate, Maya, not once. She doesn't own any part of me anymore." He walked over, took my hand. "Our daughter will never have to unlearn the kind of love I grew up with. She'll only know the real kind, the kind that builds, protects, and chooses over and over again." I looked at our child, sleeping safe in the home we had rebuilt. "You broke the cycle," I whispered. "No," he said. "We did." Outside, the sun was setting, painting the nursery walls gold. We hadn't just survived, we had rebuilt for her. And that made every scar worth it.